All right. Here we go. Welcome to the values-based mindset experience, not the Mike Garrison experience. I'm just part of it. We are a podcast dedicated to not only discovering every unique human being's personal values, but executing in a life of their own design. And today we've got a very exciting guest, Brian, with the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Well, I was looking around the room to see if there was anybody else here. You said exciting guest. I was like, is there somebody else in the room?
Well, it was more exciting last time. So this is like take two because the internet couldn't handle Brian Sexton on this podcast. But the internet's been upgraded. We're going to go for it. So Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, plug your podcast.
Well, first of all, it's good to be on the Mike Garrison. The Mindset's Value-Based podcast. Mike, just in a quick little nutshell, live in Barbersville, West Virginia with my first wife of almost 24 years and only wife. I'm a father to a 20-year-old college student at Marshall University where I went to school. Have been in customer engagement, sales management, territory building for about the last 25 years. Built and managed territories all the way from $1 million up to 25 million. And so I was thinking about yesterday, I'm like, how much business have I managed in my career? It's well over $100 million of business that I've managed. And so, started my podcast, the Intentional Encourager podcast, shameless plug, wearing the pullover. Started the Intentional Encourager podcast in April. And so, and my first book, People Buy From People, will be out very soon, probably late November, early December. So great Christmas present. You're looking for a good Christmas present. So, but just really here just to share with your podcast audience some things that are important to me, some values that are really important to me that I've held on to throughout my life and my career. So, man, what an honor to be with you today, brother. I appreciate the invitation.
Cool. So let's get started. So one of the things that we believe very strongly at my company, and especially on this podcast, is that most people aren't in touch with their own values. That doesn't mean they're not there. Like, we all have values, but there's a big difference between subconscious influence values that the culture, that Facebook and Twitter, those bastions of free speech and values. There's a big difference between values that you experience externally and values that you codify internally and then express. And so we're going to start this off with talking about what values drive you. What do they mean? We're going to define them a little bit, as in you're going to define them. And then, or concurrently, we'll talk about how you apply them, because that's the biggest thing. Is we don't value just having the values, Brian. We ruthlessly are dedicated to expressing these values as every unique human being. So what's one of the values that just absolutely drives you?
Truth.
So let's build that out. So the questions I have around it are like, why is that so important? And how does that look?
Okay, so there's two things. So something that my dad always poured into me. He said to me from a very early age, if you say it, own it. And so the one thing that would always get me in trouble quickly and would incur my dad's wrath was lying to my dad. That was an absolute no. Oh man, that was, my dad would punish my sisters and I, but he punished us worse for lying. Because to my dad, he was very adamant about the truth. Even in business, as he and I worked together the last 10 months of his life, if somebody, he had to go sometimes and collect from customers. And if a customer said, well, yeah, I'm going to send out a check tomorrow, and next week rolls around and that check's not there, he was calling them and going, you told me that you were going to send this check. Or the next time he saw them, he would be sure to say, hey, look, You told me this and it didn't happen. And so my dad made sure that, because to him, Mike, he would say, if I say it, I've got to back it up. And so truth, that taught me very early on to that truth had to be my number one value, because in a marriage, and I've been married almost 24 years, as I mentioned, I can count on one hand the number of times I've lied to my wife in 24 years. Because if you don't base your marriage on truth, you've got nothing anyway. You're not, and the same thing with my son. I tell my son, I say, you may not like what I tell you, but I'm always going to tell you the truth. You may not like it, but I'm going to tell you the truth. And so truth is really, really important to me. And Mike, here's the thing too. There are honest liars.
Oh, yes.
There are honest liars. They believe the truth to be something that it's not. And they will die on that hill, so to speak. And so you really have to understand, truth is absolute. If you and I are together in Roanoke and we look up and it's bright all around us, the truth is the sun is shining.
Or there's been a nuclear explosion.
Or there's been, there's been fallout that's drifted from West Virginia over that way. But Mike, that's not my truth. That's not your truth. It's the truth.
Totally.
And so, that's the biggest value that I have is truthfulness and telling the truth. And I said this in a post today on LinkedIn. I'm doing some speaking for a group called Valuable Business Conversations. And one of the conversations, the question was asked me about, what's the number one conversation you're having? And I said, be best friends with the truth.
I love it. So let's dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
So I think that, believe it or not, except for we're just going to carve out politics. So we're just going to, the people that are professional liars, we're going to just move that aside.
We're not going to talk politics. Bummer, man.
Well, not directly.
I was prepared, sports, politics, whatever, man.
Well, unfortunately, sports and politics aren't that far apart anymore.
Well, yeah, good point.
Yeah. So, but I think that something that bears consideration by the audience and by anyone who, is either cursed or blessed to find this episode is, what percentage of the lies that we do tell, not just you, but other people, do we lie more internally or externally? Is there a difference, i.e., which is worse? Which is worse? I've got a take on it, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I think we lie to ourselves internally way more, because we say, I'm going to get up and exercise today. I'm going to stop eating junk food today. I'm not going to eat a bag of Oreos double stuffed cookies.
Yep.
I'm not going to drink pop. I'm not going to, and for those of you in parts of the country, that's soda.
Okay, just checking.
That's soda. Yeah, soda pop, So, we call it pop here. Always called it pop, But Mike, what I'm saying is we lie to ourselves internally way more than we do externally, because if you think about it, it's internal accountability versus external accountability. Internal accountability is, okay, if we can lie to ourselves all day long, it's us, we can move the truth to internally to fit whatever we want to do emotionally and things like that. Externally, it's a lot harder to move that truth, because people then are going to be accountable back to us and go, well, you said this.
Mm-hmm.
See, you mentioned politics for a minute. I want to park here for just a second.
Ruh-roh.
Well, no, it's a fundamental truth. What tires me out about politicians is the fact that they'll say anything to get elected, and then once they're in office, whatever they said, they have selective amnesia. It's like, well, I don't remember saying that. Well, yeah, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, I'll play you a clip, and they'll go, oh, I didn't say that. That wasn't me. We see your face. Your lips are moving. Unless you have an identical twin that we don't know about, it's you. And so a lot of people will say things in the moment to elicit a response and get what they want. And then afterwards, I got to go here for just a minute. Forgive me for being long-winded.
Well,
I got to go here for just a minute.
Go right ahead, but I'm
I got to tell
you.
I got to tell you a quick story. So I was coaching. I had a sales guy that worked for me, and we were in an account in Charleston, West Virginia, about 45 minutes from here.
Good restaurants there, by the way.
Yeah, great. Well, we were calling on a new restaurant that was opening up, and it was going to be a big account for this rep. He was relatively new with the company, and I'd actually helped recruit the guy into the company. But this guy, the one flaw that I didn't see was that he would say a lot of things. He would just fly off the mouth, say a lot of things. So I walk in with him, and the owner of the restaurant, he said, yeah, I introduced myself. I said, I'm the district manager. I'm his boss. And the guy goes, hey, I need to talk to you for a minute. Pulled me off to the side. And he goes, your sales rep has been telling me he's going to do things for us. He said about 6 or 8 things he's going to do, and he hasn't done any of them. And so, Mike, in sales, that can kill you worse than anything. And I said, okay, tell me what he's promised you. And I started writing them down. I said, okay. I said, I tell you what. I said, I'll be back to you. I'm going to start working on him right now. And I said, I'm going to start working on him now. So I excused myself, made a couple phone calls. And I said, okay, I've got the ball rolling here, and here. I've got some feelers out here. I said, I'll be back to you at the end of the week, first of next week. I think this was the middle of the week. And so we're driving down the road, and my sales rep said, well, what do you want to talk to you about? I said, yeah, we, just wanted to tell me a couple things. I said, it's all good. I said, don't worry about it. And so we're driving back, and we get almost back. I was riding with him. We get almost back to Barbersville, where we both lived. And I said, I need to go to Walmart. I said, can you take me over to Walmart? He said, yeah. So we pull in the Walmart parking lot, and he goes, and I said, hey, why don't you come in with me? He said, okay. So we went in, we walked back to the office supplies, school supplies, notebooks, pens, things like that. And I said, what kind of notebook do you like? He said, what do you mean? I said, pick out a notebook, because I'm going to buy you a notebook. He said, what do you mean you're going to buy me a notebook? I said, that guy pulled me aside at that restaurant back there because you promised him some things that you haven't done. And I said, the problem you've got is you'll tell somebody something, you won't write it down, you forget about it, but they don't forget about it. And I said, you're going to start writing some things down. I said, if I have to have another conversation like that, it's not going to be good. I'm going to write you up. I said, because your reputation affects our reputation as a company. And I used to tell my guys all the time, Mike, anything you say can and will be used against you. And so again, people say things in the moment and they don't follow through with them. And so that's what impairs integrity. That's what impairs truth, is that when people say things, they're not followed up on. And so there's no accountability. So I didn't mean to take a long way around that answer, but I wanted to give a real world application to the audience about living that out personally.
So let's go there. Did he make it?
He didn't make it.
How long did it take?
I left before he did. So, but through the grapevine, I found out he didn't make it. He and I knew he wouldn't.
Yeah. So
I knew he wouldn't.
So let me tell you, here's what I think. I think that internal lying is the most toxic thing you can do, to include substances. Like I think the most addictive and the most corrosive substance in the world are lies you tell yourself. And it's one of the reasons why we have, like when you first start doing the values-based mindset method, our system, you don't get to pick what you do. It's already preset. So for the first 45 days, you're going to do 4 actions every single day. And if you miss just 1 out of the 4, one day you go back to 0 and you start again. And the reason being is so much of why people fail to operate at the excellent levels of their personal potential is because of self-deception.
Mhm.
And most self-deception, when we're looking at improving, when we're looking at trying to improve performance, which really is the audience we have here, right?
Mhm.
Business people, these are our career people that are looking to kind of scale either individually or as an organization. If you can't absolutely focus in on what is true and execute it with flawless discipline, that's building your house on a bad foundation. I seem to be thinking of a story from a couple thousand years ago, right?
Mhm.
Like maybe you should make sure that you have a foundation, and this comes from deception. And like there's a reason I wear an analog watch and why I'm in violent and strident opposition to smartwatches, right? Because all they are is it's like saying, alcoholism's not good enough. I need to add cocaine, right? Because the smartphone is bad enough. The smartphone is where we get conditioned to lie.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to check on my friends. And then you're watching puppy videos, right? Or like, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ and I'm in control of my temper and I don't say bad things. And then I get on Facebook and I call people evil things for being a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter, right? It's
I'm glad you said that. I got to go there for just a minute.
yeah, because
When my son, when my
internal truth, that's the enemy. That's what I'm fighting.
well, when my now 20-year-old son was about 12, he wanted to get a Facebook page. And I said, "Okay, you got 3 rules." Said number 1, your first rule is you don't post anything that's not uplifting, funny, positive. You've always got to be posting positive. I said the second thing is you don't share something you don't understand. And the third thing is if you break any one of those 2 rules and your mom and I find out about it, you're done.
On Facebook.
Because, and I've caught myself, and I
Not
learned
done,
this lesson, huh?
not done as in terminated, just Facebook.
Yeah, well, it's, but I learned this the hard way on Twitter. And this guy's actually a good friend of mine now. We were just meeting each other. There in my state, there's Big Brother, WVU, West Virginia University, and there's Little Brother, Marshall University, where I went to school. And they don't like each other. And so I was saying something snarky about WVU, and this guy, my friend, my buddy, is a big WVU fan. He said, "Look, dude," he said, "if you don't like what I'm saying, unfollow me." And that was a V8 moment. Like, how did I let myself get there? How did I let myself go there? And so, Mike, I have those moments occasionally where I go, I'm dialing back. I'm out. I'm out. Because on LinkedIn, my rule on LinkedIn is if I can't add value with a post or comment, I don't post or comment. And so, but on other platforms, I've allowed myself at times, and I'm being honest, I'm being transparent. I've allowed myself to go places that I've said I wouldn't go. And so to your point about your digital presence is you really need to be consistent. And if you wouldn't say that to somebody's face, why would you post it?
Well, I think like I grew up with like don't say anything in private that you wouldn't say to somebody else's face.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no more privacy, right? And
Totally correct. Yeah.
and I would say the seniors. I hate to say it, I'm over 50, so I'm a senior now. The
No, I'm
seniors,
pushing 50, so don't feel bad.
well, like pushing's better than pulling, like because it's in the rear view and it's coming behind me.
Yeah.
But I think that it's across all age groups right now. We have got a serious problem with truth, and like for instance, like my core value, Brian, is freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right? But freedom for me isn't some flag on the wall. Freedom for me is based upon my belief that I am a son of God, that God chose to create me and God loved me. And that only through that relationship do I have any chance of my jacked up, crazy brain being able to have some ability to perceive what's real and what's true. So we're
Yeah.
not that far off because truth for me, truth is the freedom. Now, there's a whole bunch of other values, but like the way that we use this system, this concept of values, is we then apply it. And you've done a great job with the truth. You've not only talked about what it means, but you've given some examples. What's another value that is core to you?
Well, I'll tell you in just a minute, but I want to park on what you said there.
Sure.
About freedom. You went to airborne school, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you went to the United States Army Airborne School.
And I stayed.
And you stayed. So not only do you believe in freedom, but you put your money where your mouth is. You enlisted.
Yes.
Okay. And again, thank you for your service to our country. I think we should all, any veteran that we run into, we should thank them for their service. But Mike, here's the truth. A lot of people will say, I value that, but they won't put their money where their mouth is.
Yep.
And so, people will say, well, I love freedom. I thank God we're in the freest country in the world. But when the rubber meets the road, would you be willing to put your life on the line and do the things you have to do to defend freedom? And so I wanted to just say that to you, because I know it's your truth, because you've actually put your money where your mouth is.
So thank you. We're gonna park there just for a second, because you've touched on one of the core themes about values-based mindset, and it's about identity. And this, like, I knew I had something. And there's an episode with a good friend of mine, Matthew Churchill, who was the first real guinea pig for this. So it's the episode number 1. I encourage people to watch it. Matt and I managed to avoid swearing during it, which for us as believers, that we struggle with that. And so we were very proud of that. To watch
if cursing were not a sin, to me, I would be a linguist.
Yeah, exactly. So, but here's the thing is, I had a friend, a really good friend, and I'm not going to say his name because he's going to be on the podcast in the next week or two, and he's going to tell the story and how it affected him. But I was trying early on, a couple of years ago, trying to have him understand the difference between values that you hold and values that you prepare to live for, right? Mm-hmm. The difference between preparation and commitment. Commitment is worthless if you don't do the preparation. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, we're going down the road, middle of the night, just you're in your vehicle, and you pass a minivan flipped over on the side of the road and started to get on fire. What do you do? I said, you got a full phone signal. What do you do? He goes, well, I'm going to help him. I'm like, how? He goes, well, I'm going to help him. I go, well, are you going to call on the phone while you keep driving and he goes, no, I'm going to stop. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? And we got down to the fact that his values, what was most sacred to him, and he was very emotional, they compelled him to want to physically go and save that family, a wife and 3 children. By the way, he wasn't aware of this, but I was talking about his family. So, and then, because we were having an argument about whether or not he was physically prepared, right? Mm-hmm. And there's different types of physical preparation. If you've been in the military, even if you're out of shape, you are more physically prepared than someone who hasn't been in the military, because you have a different gear. You have a different resolute face. You can just do things, right? If you're a mother, you have a different gear. Long story short, we got down and I said, it's your family in the car. You're almost 10 years younger than I am. You are, by looking at you, you're a lot thinner. I'm 52. I'm heavier than you are. Who do you want to save your family? One of us has to go, and he has to go right now. And he looked at me and said, you. And I went, good choice, right? And I said, why? I'm older. He goes, Mike, you are a lot stronger than I am. You lift weights, and you're heavier than I am, but I don't care how much you weigh. I care if you can get my family out of a turned over vehicle. And I said, how's that feel? And to be very succinct about his response, which was like hurt my feelings. he said, "Not good. I dislike you."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's think about that for a
So
second.
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let me look here. I hear you. Here's the big thing. Most of our life in the Western civilization, and particularly in the United States and Canada, right? Most of our existence is comfortable. Like,
Mhm.
we are not required to be excellent to actually have really amazing results compared to every human being that's ever existed,
Yeah.
right? So here's the problem. When average gets you good, you're never prepared to be excellent when excellence is required. And the
Mhm.
worst thing that can happen is for you to have that moment in your life, and it will come,
Mhm.
whether it's your death or other items beforehand, when the excellence is required and you know you didn't do the most basic of preparation, you will regret that for all days.
Yep. So there's two things there to park on. Number one, you would be the right choice because your background and your training from the military, you're taught to be tactical rather than emotional.
Right. Get it done.
Because when you have a mission and you deploy into a mission, it's here's the battle plan. This is what we're going to do. Your job is to execute, period. So you've been trained to execute. Right behind you, you wrote something that I told you one day. Fear is greater than the facts. In that situation with the minivan turned over,
Yep, there it is.
the reason you would be the guy, yeah, the reason you
Yes.
would be the guy is if that were you and I, my first response would be fear. If I see my family, if I recognize that vehicle and it's turned over, my first response is fear. Your first response is facts. The van's turned over. I've got to go down at this angle. The first thing I'm going to do is this.
I'm breaking the window with this.
Exactly. That's why you're the right choice, because a lot of times, Mike, and let's go back for a minute what we were talking about lying to ourselves internally. A lot of times we are not tactical with things in our own lives. We can be more tactical in telling someone else what to do
Sure. I'm
and
a
helping
coach.
someone else. Yeah. Yeah. But when it comes to ourselves, we think, okay, well, this is going to be hard. And then doubt kicks in, and then some fear kicks in, and then we think, am I good enough? Am I smart? We become Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? And doggone it, do people like me? And so that's what happens to us internally, because it's us. We're the ones having to do the heavy lifting. So now we start to think, are we built for this? It's easy for a coach to say, yeah, you're built for it, and here's why. If you do this, and this, you're going to be stronger and you're going to be able to execute it. So I think it's easier for us to lie to ourselves internally, because we go, and sometimes we have the coddling instinct within us, right? From the
Sometimes.
time yeah, well, most of the time, it's like, I'm 6'3", 270 pounds.
So you're a Sasquatch.
Yeah, I'm Sasquatch. Yeah, yeah, big time. My mother, my soon to be 66-year-old mother, is not going to pick me up and pat me on the behind like she did when I was a year old, and rock me and go, it's going to be okay, Brian.
If she's a West Virginian, she's probably going to do something else.
Oh, my mom's got bad knees. Yeah, my mom's got she's had two knees replaced. So, but again, Mike, the thing of it is, there are a lot of times that the internal lying, the internal truth that we choose to tell ourselves is, oh, they're there, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. It's rockabye, Mikey, in the treetop, but it's a lie. It's a lie when we really need to be kicking ourselves in the butt.
So why do we do it? So I will tell you this. I'm going to ask you why, but I'm going to give you a different answer. You ready?
Yeah.
The antidote to the fear, right? It doesn't eliminate the fear, but the antidote is training, not effort. not exercise. I always tell people that working out is not training. Exercise is the movements you do. Training is the plan to achieve a specific result, whether it's measurable in I can squat 500 pounds, or whether it's I am ready across all kinds of different time modalities and integers. I'm ready to react. And so, for example, like I got really fat.
And you're not talking about PHAT for the kids.
No, I've never been that. I'm too old. But I got fat. I weighed over 260 pounds. And I had a friend who didn't even recognize the picture was him and me on Facebook golfing. And I was like, man, I weighed 260. And I was telling him, and we were doing a coaching. He's like, no way, you were never that fat. I pulled up that post on Facebook. He goes, that's not you. And I'm like, look at the time date stamp. He goes, oh my God, you're huge.
Yeah, I was 361 pounds at one time. The morning I had weight loss surgery, I was 352 pounds.
So you know what the secret is?
Yeah.
The secret is, number one, you have to get to a moment of clarity, right? Period. And at that moment of clarity, you make a decision. And the decision is, am I going to tell myself the truth, or I'm going to go back to the warm, fuzzy blanket of denial while I'm living in the tiger enclosure, hoping they don't let the tigers out? Right?
June 25th, 2008. I go to the doctor, and now instead of being on 2 type 2 diabetic medications, now we're adding a blood pressure medication.
Nice.
He looked at me and he goes, if you don't get weight loss surgery, you're going to die. Period. Went out to the car, called my wife, and I said, okay, looks like we're doing this. February 23rd, 2009, I had weight loss surgery. And so have I put some weight on? Yeah, I put some weight back on. But the thing of it is, and my doctor told me, I went about a month ago and he said, man, everything looks good. You're doing well. He said, but he told me, and I said, yeah, I put on a little bit of weight. He said, but you're still 90 pounds less than you were before. And that extra weight you're not carrying is better on you. Do you need to lose weight? Yeah, we all need to lose weight. I mean, if we're all honest with ourselves. But what I'm saying is this, that was my moment of clarity, Mike, when my doctor looked at me and said, I'm not going to be treating you for much longer because you're not going to be here.
Yeah. So like, let's go there. So like a lot of the people that I interact with about this values, where it comes to fitness, health, things like that. Like for me personally, so I'm not addressing you, you're in charge of you. For me personally, losing weight was not effective because it didn't tie into my values. It would be a result of me living out my values. But it really came to head for me when I realized that my blood pressure was 184 over 149. And the doctor was like, you're going on medication today. I don't want to hear you say another word in my office. You will go directly from this office to the pharmacy. I'm going to call the pharmacy personally right now. They will have the blood pressure medicine and you will take it in the drive-through. Do you understand me? And I was like, whoa. And for me, I hate medicine. Like I hate taking medicine.
No, but that was exactly what you needed to hear.
That's what I needed, but it didn't stop me. You ready for what actually changed it? So this is when it changed. My current doctor, who happens to be from West Virginia.
Good man.
And he's got to have at least 175 IQ. He is the smartest person I ever met. In fact, I've told him in personal conversations that any unhappiness in his life is derived from the fact he's too intelligent. Like he thinks about too many things that are important at once. I don't have that problem. I only think about one thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was talking to him and I'd gotten to know him and I said, hey man, like, do you accept patients? I'm looking for a new, primary care doctor who's not going to want me to take a lot of drugs. And he looked at me and I was fat, like with 2 F's, right? And he went, I'll only agree to be your physician if you agree to a sleep apnea test. And I went, what? He goes, like, that's the problem. I can look at your huge neck. Like, and I thought it was all the all my, winter survival system that I had going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like multi-season survival system that I had. And he said, no, you have sleep apnea. I want you to do the test. So I agreed because once again, he'd spoken to me. He was a believer. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. They stopped after 45 minutes. I took the sleep apnea test and they stopped. They came in and they said, you have stopped breathing 122 times in 45 minutes.
I've been there, done that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said, he was the guy that was doing the test was the son of the doctor that ran the clinic. He said, I called up my father. This is like at midnight and talked about what was happening to you. Right. And he said, we don't care if insurance doesn't pay for it. You are going on a CPAP right now. And it changed my life. I remember
I had two episodes a minute.
Yeah.
When I did my test.
Driving back that next morning after being on a CPAP, which didn't fit perfectly, I remember driving and seeing the sun come up and seeing color. And
feel like a new person, don't you?
Well, I realized I hadn't really seen color in years. I was so fatigued. And that was part of the process. And so what happened was, and this is what you get down to it, I thought about it. Like, I really wanted to lose weight and look good because I am a vain person, right? And everyone's vain because we're afraid of death. And we realize that any bad decisions we make medically hasten the inevitable end. But what happened was I decided that what was most important to me was to be strong. That like, and not like huge muscular, but I just wanted to be able to do what I could do. I thought about what I had learned in the military. I thought about all these things, and I was not in position to execute upon my values. And that's what we're all about here. It's like, we want you to train on purpose. We want you to be uncomfortable on purpose because training and growth and preparation is harder than not. But we want you to do that because you believe, and if you don't believe it, don't participate. But if you believe that there's going to be adversity, we want you to be uncomfortable beforehand so that when it is most necessary, Brian, for you to be able to act upon your values, that you can. That you can give the last measure. Doesn't matter what the result is, because the regret doesn't come from a bad outcome that you're prepared for. It comes from not preparing. Like there are, like, nature hates you. Like, nature does not care. I always laugh at people that think hunting is cruel. And I'm like, have you ever watched Animal Planet? Like, there is nothing more cruel than how animals die in the wild.
Yeah, every animal in the wild hunts every other animal in the wild.
Yeah. Like, trees will try and move away from giraffes. They've got pictures of it. Like, the actual leaves will change their chemical structure to try and keep giraffes from eating them. And so reality is brutal. So back to you.
Well, no, you were talking about sleep apnea. I know that very well. I had my sleep study done September 11th, 2001. That's where I spent the night of 9/11.
Well, now that makes it easy to remember.
Well, my wife asked me that day. She said, "Are you still going to go through with the test?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I would drive. At that time, I worked for a food distributor and I lived outside of my territory, so I had about an hour drive every day, and I was falling asleep at the wheel.
Yep. I know.
And so, so I was on a CPAP machine. Let's see, I was on a CPAP machine for about almost 7 years until I had weight loss surgery. I haven't been on one I haven't been on one since 2010, I think is the last time.
My doctor tells me I don't need him, and I tell him to shut his mouth. I say it's like my guns and my Bible.
Yep. Yeah. But again, we started with this talking about truth. Okay. The truth is, for guys like you and I, and if you've ever had sleep apnea, you understand the truth is it doesn't matter where you sleep or how long you sleep. The truth is you don't sleep.
If you have sleep apnea, yes.
You're always active in the middle of the night because the episodes that you were talking, I had 2 a minute.
Because
I had 2 episodes.
Die.
Yeah. Yeah. Your body is um, your body literally is fighting to breathe. And so that's why you're fatigued, because your body has been working all night to just get some air and get some breath. And you wake up and go, man, why have I got this pounding headache? Why am I so like I've not been to bed? And your body's going, hey, stupid, you didn't have to do what we did all night,
Yeah. Why am I
to
running off
keep
the
you
road
alive.
at
Yeah.
1 p.m.?
Yeah.
What's interesting is, and this gets back to, and we're going to stay on the weight loss thing for a little bit more. I'm not going to keep it too much longer, but there's a reason diets don't work. And the reason diets don't work is because, without exception, most diets, which gives it an exception. You see how I did that? But without exception, most diets.
You
I've
just
been
pulled a Jedi mind trick on me. I'm still trying to process it.
I've
So
been watching too much politics. But
I know,
anyways,
right?
I've learned how to say nothing with a whole bunch of words. But anyways, most
They call
diets.
that coach speak too. A lot of good
Oh, no,
football
no.
coaches.
My clients would say it's usually brutal and blunt. So here's the thing. Diets don't work because the same reason losing weight doesn't work, the same reason getting back in shape doesn't work, all these things is because the process of improvement is a war against your unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And diets generally have a pattern of behavior associated with them to get to the result that people are not willing to keep doing, right? The reason weight loss surgery exists is because it acknowledges, I don't care whether people like it or not, it acknowledges that one of the hardest things in the world to do is change your identity. And if you lose the weight, at least you have an opportunity, whether it's through surgery or something else, you have an opportunity to recreate yourself and rediscover yourself. Here's what I think is more important. You come up with your values. You spend time reflecting on them, journaling them. And then if your values lead you to believe that you need to be a more capable human physically, then we need to look at a long process of change, and we need to do variables. Like, I knew how to get in shape. I was a Green Beret. I knew how to get in shape. I was a CrossFit coach, but I kept getting fatter. And the real reason was sleep apnea. I could not recover. And like, until I had looked enough and not gotten advice from, Instagram, but I found the right doctor who said, here is the fundamental problem. He goes, I don't care what you want to do, until you're sleeping, nothing else matters. I started sleeping, and all of a sudden I had enough recovery to start making better decisions. Like, because you remember what happened before you got to CPAP? Everything starts to get more and more fuzzy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have willpower because you're fatigued. And what do you think about that contention I have, that you have to look at a long process and a process that supports who you really are?
Well, I wasn't a Green Beret. I was more like the Green Giant, like the guy you see on the can of vegetables.
Yeah, but you're
When I would
tall.
walk in, people would go, ho, 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 Green Giant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, um, but no, Mike, here's the thing with weight loss surgery. Here's the two things that I had to do. Okay. The first one was, my doctor said, you're going to consume 130 to 150 grams of protein a day. Okay. Because what happens is when they do the work in your stomach is all muscle. So you have to rebuild that muscle. And so I was inhaling protein. I had like a gold member. GNC was sending me stuff for Christmas, like, thank you for helping us make our bonus. The store manager at GNC in Barbersville was like sending me personalized Christmas cards, like, I made my bonus because of you. Thank you.
Mr. Sexton.
Yes. Yes. So I was consuming a lot of protein in any form that I could get it in, shakes, drinks, whatever I could get it in. But the second thing is when your stomach is cut to the size of your thumb, there's not a lot of margin for error. And when you've eaten something, you've eaten too much, or you've eaten something you shouldn't have, because you instantly feel sick. Okay.
Yes.
And so it's a metaphor for what we're talking about is, and I'll wrap it back around to how we started the conversation. If you're a person that believes that truth is your core value, when you violate that truth, you instantly feel sick.
Hopefully nauseous.
Hopefully nauseous. And you don't want to feel that way. I do anything that I can to avoid feeling sick, feeling nauseous. Even if something's really good that my wife has made, I know where the limit is for me. I know I've got to stop or I'll be sick. The feeling, I don't want that feeling of nauseousness. And that's the thing, Mike. If people can get in their heads that whatever their absolute truth line is, never to cross it. See, for my wife and I, and I'll be very transparent. Our absolute is this. My wife said, if you cheat on me, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
I know where the line is. I choose intentionally. That's my other word, is intention. I choose intentionally not to cross that line because I know my wife is absolute rock solid on that truth because we've talked about it a bunch of times. And so again, I don't want to go to that point because I know if I cross that line, the feeling is going to be far more intense than nausea.
Yeah.
And so again, you have to understand where that line is for you internally. And you have to understand that the way you feel internally drives the way you're going to perform externally.
Right. And the way you feel is derived from your mindset and derived from your training. And this is the problem. So many people think that a mindset is a emotional effort thing. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Now, there is effort involved, but a mindset that is values based is prepared. It's based around training. And one of the things that makes it different is we track stuff, right? You're tracking in 4 areas: spiritual, physical, relational, and professional, right? And you're tracking one thing that is a baseline activity. And so when we get to this, let's talk a little bit about application of values for good, meaning you get rewarded in the moment, and for bad, you don't get rewarded. Like, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian. It could be successfully positioned that a lot of people that became Christians decades ago did so with an expectation that that would be an advantage in our society. I would say that that advantage, if still existing, is less than it used to be.
Well, a lot of people became Christians because it was great fire insurance.
Well, not even that. It was great sales insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I was growing up, they're like, hey, you got to go to church. If you want to do well, you got to go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, I wasn't a believer. I was attending. People say, you're a Christian? Oh, yeah, I go to church. I go to church. Right?
Yeah.
It cost me nothing. When I became a Christian, the first year was terrible. I was like, this is the worst deal ever made. I have less fun. I feel more guilt, and I am miserable. You know, it got better, by the way, but I wasn't discipled. So
it's like it's reverse.
No truth.
It's reverse marriage. The first year you're married it's all honeymoon because, this is all fun and exciting and wonderful. It's year 22, 23, 24, 30, 35, 40, where you really figure out. And here's what I'll tell people, Mike. The number one advice that I give to young people that say, well, what kind of advice do you have for us? And I said, you got to always remember why you fell in love with that person.
Yeah. You ready for this? See this, everybody?
Yeah, I got one too.
This ring is going to be 28 next year.
Oh, I got a new one about, when did my wife get this for me? Oh man, probably 7-8 years, about 7 years ago.
So that's a funny story. It's like, I got a lot of crap because this is, I guess it was like $50, just a plain gold ring. You guys can't see it, but it's all scratched up, and people are like, you should get that polished. And, everybody's got advice about my wedding ring.
Yeah.
I look at them, and depending upon my degree of caffeination, they will get a variation of this. It's my wedding ring.
Do you remember Best? You remember the company Best?
Absolutely. This was
That's
bought at Lord and Taylor, by the way.
yeah. I got mine at I got my wedding band. My wife has it. I
You know,
got my original wedding band at Best.
that's where I bought all my tennis balls when I played tennis.
Yeah.
Best had, if there's a very limited selection, but they were the best place in the world. And if you've never heard of Best, I apologize, but it was the best place in the world to buy tennis balls because they were like $2 a can less. And so my buddy and I would go in there. We played tennis all the time, and we'd buy cases of tennis balls. And people would think we're insane because everybody else was getting radios, and it was kind of like,
Oh yeah, you could get electronics, you could get jewelry, you
I
could
wonder if
get
Best Buy,
appliances.
I wonder if Best Buy is related to Best.
True story. They are in the same. So where our Best was in Barbersville, they occupy that building,
No way.
that old building.
I just wonder, you know,
I don't know,
Best Buy's a lot.
but again, the thing about it is that what I've learned in almost 24 years of being married is my wife is continuing to evolve. She's not the same girl she was at 26 when I married her. She'll be 51 in December. I'm not the same guy she married at 24. I just turned 48. We've got kids. We've got a house. We've got careers.
Podcast.
Yeah, I got a podcast. Yeah, don't ask my wife. My wife's never listened to the Intentional Encourager podcast. She's like, listen, I have to hear you talk enough.
That's what my wife says, and it was before I ever did an episode.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Maybe one of these days I'll get Tanya to be on a podcast. But I am married to the shyest girl. My wife is a beautiful lady, but she is an introvert around other people, except with me. And then I turn into the introvert, and she's the extrovert.
So let's talk about this. So we're going to do a little bit longer. If you're still here,
yeah.
So
if you haven't fallen asleep yet,
No.
if I haven't bored you to tears,
let's talk about living out your values.
Yeah.
When you're going to have societal or relational pressure to not execute based upon those values.
Ooh.
So can you think of some times where friends, family, other people were providing, let's just say, friction in your executing on what you knew to be true?
Oh, wow.
At your discretion. So the viewer or the listener, I did not preconceive of this. It just happened.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got an unusual story. Okay.
No kidding.
So yeah, no kidding. So my late father, Jerry, when my son was born, I had a goatee. I didn't have the beard like I have now. I have a goatee. And I wore glasses. The reason I don't wear glasses is my son at 6 months old decided, ooh, dad's got glasses. Let's pull them off his face.
Yes.
But my wife, I said, that's good reason to get contact lenses. My dad said this to me one day. He looked at me and he said, I'm going to tell you something right now. He said, if I see marks on my grandson's face where you scratched him up with that beard, me and you are going to have problems. Because my dad wanted to be clean shaven. My dad wore glasses. He was clean shaven. I have contact lenses and a beard. I look like my dad. If I put glasses on and shave, I look like my dad. My wife heard that. She was within earshot. And you know how ladies are when they're within earshot and it's like you're talking about their man? It was like antennas up. She was like, Phew. And she looked at my dad and she goes, I'll tell him when he can shave that, not you.
Boom.
Yeah, my dad was just like, yeah, atomic elbow. That's exactly right. My wife came off the top rope with the atomic elbow. And then she strutted around the ring like Hulk Hogan, like she had just, but that was my dad. My dad for 40 years of my, even the day before my dad died, my dad was still trying to give me wisdom, give me insight, give me understanding. There were times I'd be like, Dad, I got this. You know, we're good. I got this. Or he would tell me about parenting my son and be like, I got this. We're good. But now that my dad's been gone for the last almost 8 years, I realized my dad at times was trying to get my attention and say, hey, I see something you may not see. And I don't know how else, you know, my dad was not a, with me, at least with my sisters, he was more that way. With me, it was that atomic elbow. There were times my dad just dropped the hammer. And that's okay. You know, it's the way that I am with my son sometimes. And I'll tell him, and sometimes my son gets hurt, his feelings get hurt. I'm like, look, I'm trying to raise you to be an adult. The world is not going to always consider your feelings.
If ever.
Yeah. And so, you know, for me, Mike,
tell the grizzly bear that you feel insecure and that it should leave you alone.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, you know, sometimes the people we love the most, we're the most blunt with. We're the most, and we don't consider really their feelings. We just tell them, like, you know, it's like Howard Cosell, I'm telling you like it is. You know, it's
totally
for those younger people that don't remember Howard Cosell. Mike and I are just telling
bad hair, big nose, millions of dollars. So let's go a little bit there. So here's something I've observed, and I'm going to look for you to provide some empathy and direction for people listening that struggle with this. So,
okay.
So I'm going to talk about a truth. And the truth is that when you start to change, you threaten the identity of everyone that's closely attached to you, professionally and personally. So that when you start to improve, you threaten the identity. This is a fact, right? Because when you're like, when I started to lose a lot of weight, when I started to do things, my wife found that exciting and interesting, but it also threatened her perception.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Totally. And it also, when I stopped drinking like I still drink, but I stopped drinking out in public and stuff like that, because quite frankly, one of the stupidest things you can do if you're looking to be healthy is drink calories. Like one of the worst things you can do is drink calories that have no vitamins or minerals. I don't want to hear about it with bourbon. I know it started off as corn. It tastes good. I admit it, but it's not doing a lot for you. So my point being is when you start to do those things, some of my friends are like, hey, that's great. That's great. Way to go. Those friends are still with me.
Yeah.
Some of the other friends were like, hey man, like you should keep drinking. You don't need to do that. I said, hey, I appreciate that. You're right. I can do anything I want up until someone else stops me.
Well, here's what happens. You know, 30 years later, and not saying that you're an alcoholic doing it. I'm making a point here. Your buddies that continue to encourage you to continue those behaviors are also not going to be at the doctor with you when you find out you've got a liver condition because you've drank too much,
or I've got diabetes because
you've got diabetes.
Made me eat more.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
the real problem for me. Like my problem with alcohol is not alcoholism. I tried to be an alcoholic. Like many things in my life, I was unsuccessful. Right?
Evidently, you know why I never drank?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Alcohol for me lowers inhibitions and is most consistently expressed as eating an extra 1,500 to 2,000 calories.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I choose to drink, I am choosing to overindulge in a lot of other things.
Yeah. When my dad and I worked together, there was a young guy that we worked with. And we worked for a company in Southern West Virginia. So this kid, God love him, his name was Cody. He goes, "Hey, Brian, how come when you was in college, you didn't drink a whole lot?" You never did drink any. I said, no, Cody, I didn't drink. He said, man, how come you didn't drink? Everybody drinks when they in college. How come you didn't drink? And my dad was standing over about 60 feet away. And I said, Cody, look right over there. And he goes, Jerry? And I said, yep. I said, the number one reason why I didn't drink in college was right over there. I said, because if I brought it in my dad's house, it was not going to be a good day. The first thing he would have done, if I'd have brought it in, there would have been two things that happened immediately. The first thing is he would have taken it out of my hands physically, and he would have opened the back door and he would have threw it as far as he could have. He would have chucked it out the door. And then he probably would have grabbed me and said, don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I'm going to say this. You say, well, why would your dad, isn't that child physical? Let me tell you something. My dad spanked me, and I'm thankful for it.
Me too. You know what's funny? My dad, when I was older, apologized for spanking me. I said, you got this all wrong, Dad. Like, you've been reading too many self-help books or something. You should have spanked me more.
Yeah. And so, that was the biggest reason that I didn't drink, was because my dad was like, no, and again, it goes back to truth and absolutes, Mike. My dad had an absolute. This is my house. You live here willingly. I have expectations that I'm going to set. And when you cross the line and there's a failure in that area, we're going to deal with it.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify, in no way am I saying that one of the values people should have is not drinking. I am saying that if one of your values is not drinking, that's perfectly fine. Live your life intentionally. If your value,
you got to do you. If you feel like it's wrong to drink, don't drink. If you're okay with drinking, drink. I mean,
but don't make that decision based upon other people that haven't earned the right to speak into your life.
Do you know why my wife is married to me to this day?
That's not a safe question for me to answer.
Well, no, this is a true story. This is a true story.
So the bigger softball.
Well, the girl that fixed us up, she was engaged to my best friend, and Tanya and her were talking, and she said, I want somebody that doesn't drink, smoke, cuss, and will take me to church. And Julie said, have we got the guy for you?
It's always nice to match the list, right?
Yeah. And that's the reason that my wife is married to me today, is because I didn't. And Mike, here's the thing.
I would submit that sales had something to do with it too.
Well, yeah, I was pretty good at that, but not to not to shame anybody or anything like that. But I still to this day have not taken a drink. I've had alcohol in my mouth one time and spit it out. That was when I was 17, my senior year of high school. But what I'm saying is that for Brian, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't chew. I choose not to curse. That's me. I do not, and I have good friends that do drink and they let things slip. And you know what? It's okay, because we focus on common ground and we focus on things that we agree on and things like that. So I'm not trying to say, thou shalt not drink. Listen, you have to do what is right for you. You're going to answer to the Lord one day the same as I'm going to answer to the Lord one day. But for me, I don't do it.
Maybe a little bit later.
Yeah. But for me, Mike, I just don't do it. I never have, and I likely never will.
And that's the thing, is like, at the end of the day, the values-based mindset experience is not about my values. It's about your values. When I say your, I mean anyone that hears this, because I believe that the more we go inside, the more we decide who and what we stand for, the more attractive and more respectful we are to other people. Because right now, free speech in this country doesn't really exist, because cancel culture is canceling human beings.
Yeah.
If we believe that we know truth and that it's worth it for us to share this truth, I would argue that then we should be compelled to value other people's truth. We don't have to accept it. We don't have to live it ourselves, but we should be willing to listen to other people's version of truth. And I will just say, I like to see really radical and stupid people given the opportunity to let me know who they are. Like,
Yeah, but here's the problem with cancel culture.
well, that is the problem. Like,
well, here's the other fundamental problem with cancel culture. I agree with what you said. The other fundamental problem with cancel culture is that sword cuts both ways.
Oh yes,
and the people that are advocating cancel culture don't realize in the moment that it just takes one little slip up from them and they get canceled. And then now they're offended. Like, well, what happened? I don't, we're supposed to have grace and compassion. It's like, no, you're in a culture. You advocated for a culture that cancels people based on something else, but now you want what you weren't willing to give someone else.
Exactly. I mean, it's the biggest hypocrisy in the world. But that's a subject for another podcast.
No, the biggest hypocrisy in the world is the pass interference calls.
No.
Pass interference is the judgment calls of pass interference in football games. That's the biggest, because you're
a Cincinnati Bengals fan. You don't know what pass interference is. New Orleans Saints.
I do know what pass interference is, because we were going to win in week 1 against the Los Angeles Chargers, and future Hall of Famer A.J. Green got called for offensive pass interference after he caught a touchdown in the end zone, went up losing the game. So that is the biggest hypocrisy on earth, is the pass interference.
Does A.J. Green play games? Like, I mean.
You had to go there, didn't you?
I know the name, but I haven't seen him play.
Well, it's like in an but listen,
I recognize
Joe Burrow's the real deal
without a helmet.
Huh?
I know what AJ Green looks like without a helmet because that's all I see.
Oh yeah, but hey, Joe Burrow's the real deal, man. Joe Burrow is the deal right there.
Joe Burrow's great. Like, my team changed their name this year.
Yeah, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrots,
or should I say my former team?
I mean, I thought the meme was so great with when the Redskins changed their name, the Washington football team, and people are going WFT, WTF,
Oh, it's so bad. All right, so last thing. You ready? We're doing the big wind down. You obviously, now you are pre-screened because I know you are a person who is values-based. And you're intentional about it.
Yep.
If someone is wanting to start on this path and they just want to do it on their own, can you give them an idea of the relationship between discipline and routine in living out values?
You have to start with a plan. We talked about it earlier. You have to start with a plan. You have to know what it's Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. It's habit number 1, begin with the end in mind. That is a foundational truth. I don't care what it is. And that was brilliant when Covey wrote that, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind. If you don't know, so if I'm driving from here to Roanoke, I better know where Roanoke is on a map.
That would help.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so when I get in the
especially coming from where you are.
Yeah. So when I get in the car, I better know that the end no matter where I stop, the end destination, likely for me, is the Hilton Garden Inn in Roanoke out by Tanglewood Mall up on top of the hill. That's the end destination. And so I think when you're setting out to find what you want to do, is begin with the end in mind. Now, here's the thing with discipline and routine. Routine is I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to take 77 south to 460 there at Princeton. I'm going to get on 460. I'm going to take it all the way over to Roanoke. That's routine. Discipline is not stopping 874 times. You know, you may have to stop a couple of times, but not stopping every 10 miles to go, oh, look at the pretty mountains over there. Oh,
Yeah.
look at the rocks over here. Yeah, you may have to, you may stop and get a cup of coffee. You may stop and get some gas. I like to stop a little bit more often to get out, stretch my legs a little bit, things like that. That way I can stay alert on the road. It's okay to do those things.
Just don't eat at Tamarack. Don't eat.
Yeah, don't eat a Tamarack. Yeah, it's expensive but anyway, what I'm saying is this: discipline is knowing when to plan your stops, knowing when to plan to do those things, and it's saying, okay, I'm going to allow myself 6 hours to get to Roanoke, and I'm going to stop in Beckley, and I'd like to stop for 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm going to stop again, maybe right outside of Blacksburg. And I'm going to stop for 15 or 20 minutes. I may get something to eat in the car, but I'm going to keep on trucking. Mm-hmm. Discipline is not only having the route, but having stops planned.
Mm-hmm. It's changing the oil on schedule.
Yeah, changing the oil on schedule.
Making sure your tires are inflated.
Making sure you have a reservation at that hotel.
That's useful too. I mean, it's easier now, by the way, to get reservations.
Yeah, you just use the app on your phone. But that's the difference, Mike, is that it's the routine is we're behind the wheel and we're driving the car. The discipline is, I know there's going to be stops. I just got to plan for them.
Exactly. And then do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, or the unplanned stops of going, okay, if I get a flat tire, I know who I'm calling. So or if this happens, I know what I'm going to do.
And people that are not familiar with the neck of the woods that Brian and I are from, planning, especially in the winter months, planning can be far more important than people realize, because
big time.
Like, you're not going down the block, my friends. There are going to be sections of road with nothing except asphalt and trees, mm-hmm. and perhaps sharp drop-offs.
Yep. And you know that Giles County, Virginia is beautiful.
Yes.
On 460, but there's two things you want to do.
Make sure you don't have to go to the bathroom.
Make sure you don't have to go to the bathroom, and do the speed limit.
Yes.
Do the speed limit, because those boys in Giles County need the revenue, and they sure like those out-of-state plates.
They ain't playing. All right, so tell us again about your podcast. Tell us about your website. Tell us about the book.
Okay. Podcast, the Intentional Encourager podcast. You can find it on Podbean. Just search the Intentional Encourager podcast. Go to YouTube. You can find the episodes there. Just search the Intentional Encourager podcast. I usually, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, and you should be connected with me on LinkedIn at Brian Sexton MBA, I usually post the episodes for that week as well too. You're ready to make some changes there to the podcast, which is going to be pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. The book People Buy From People should be out late November. Again, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter at Brian Sexton 13, or at Intentional ENC #1. And I'll put links. I'll continue to put things out there. Facebook as well, the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'll share with everybody how they can get a copy of the book People Buy From People. And
I guarantee if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll hear about the book, because we'll be doing a review.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We may even have Brian back to pick at him about it, but we'll see. Oh
yeah. It's I'm working on the last revisions now, and it's exciting, Mike. I'll tell you this, man, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's probably going to be the thing that I'm most proud of, besides being a Christian and a husband and a father. It's awesome. So,
well, Brian, just on behalf of myself and the audience, just want to thank you for being here. And for
Brother, this was fun. It didn't feel like we went an hour and 20 minutes, man. We could have done a lot more, but
I am confident we could have done a lot more.
yeah.
And the internet didn't defeat us. All right, buddy, I'm going to wrap it up here. Really appreciate it.
Mike Garrison, I appreciate you, brother.